Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for joining us. And I'll hand it to you to do the introductions of the house.
So as usual, this is an open class by a book a month, right? We offer those once or twice every semester. And the idea here is to show you guys a lot of information, a certain way to interact with literature, right? Because I guess you all love reading, otherwise you would not be here in a Saturday afternoon, right? But it's also an opportunity for us to meet one another and for you to know what a book a month exactly is and how we work. So today's lecture, let's call it this way, is about Mary Shelley and Jane Austen, right? And we'll be talking about the Gothic novel, so basically horror stories, and how those two women really innovated the genre while it was really at birth a little bit, or was it still in its infancy, right? It was developing still, and then each one of them contributed to a different kind of development within the Gothic novels, within horror stories, right? And so before we proceed, well, for those that have just arrived, good evening. My name is Audio. Okay, I'm one of the teachers in here in a book a month. I teach the novels advanced course and also the reading class. I'm a postdoctorate. I hold a postdoctorate degree in literature, right? And I'm currently for another 2 months, and then my contract is over, a researcher at the University of Padua. And then Anna is also a teacher at the Book a Month. She is the creator of the school, actually, right? Her full name is Ana Carolina Torquato. She's also a postdoc in literature. Besides a book a month, she's also teaching right now in the University of Vienna. Okay, so in Austria. And she's teaching actually Brazilian literature and South American literature. So what we'll be doing here today is English literature in English for Brazilians. And what Ana teaches in Austria is Brazilian literature in Portuguese for foreigners. So the two things are the opposite of each other, but they really complement one another, right? And so these are who we are, right? And then what is the school? What is a book a month? Basically, it is a method to practice and to improve language while you're learning about literature, right? So we're actually studying literature. We are learning, discussing books that we love, reading short stories, reading poems. And while we're doing it, we're also improving our language, improving grammar, vocabulary, conversation, the fluency, pronunciation, and so on, okay? So the idea here is to kill two birds with one stone, right? Dois coelhos com uma só cajadada, two birds with one stone. Can you go on? Yeah. And we have been doing this for the past 5 years, right? We are really glad to say that we covered already over 100 books and, really almost 200 authors. So I was calculating the statistics recently, and both of us, we were really proud of the amount of literature that we already read with our students. It's really a privilege to be able to do that, right? And so this is the idea: literature and practicing a foreign language all at the same time. And what you'll see today is actually related to two of our courses, right? So in the novels advanced course, we read a book a month, like the name of the school suggests, right? And so in August, we'll be reading Frankenstein, which is definitely one of the novels we'll talk a lot about today. And so for those that have never met us, this is an opportunity to meet. We're glad to have you here. But for our students, this is also a little bit of an introduction to many topics that we'll discuss in just a week or two, okay? And so those are the books we'll be reading in the Novels Advanced, and we meet twice a month. So once, twice a month, and there are 2 classes, one on Saturday and another one on Thursday. And then each month we discuss a new book. And then the other course is the Novels Big Reads. The Novels Big Reads. This one is taught by Anna, and she will be discussing Jane Austen with her students, right? And in this case, in this course, what we read are slightly longer novels, right? More novels that have maybe 400 pages or something like that. So they take a bit longer. And in this course, rather than reading a book a month, we're reading actually a book every 2 months, right? So you can see there that rather than reading 5 books until the end of the year, they will read only 3. They're also meeting twice a month, right? So one week in, 1 week out. But yeah, and so the first reading is Northanger Abbey, the novel that we'll also be discussing today. Okay. I think that's it from my part. So yeah, as I've said before, we'll talk about the innovations that these 2 great, women writers brought to the Gothic novel. And so, Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Audio. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And today I have the pleasure of talking about 2 of my favorite authors, and 2 of the authors that have made me a reader, right? And a person who works with literature. So I'm really happy to do that today with you in a Saturday afternoon, right? For us, it's evening because we live in a different time zone, but for you, it's in the afternoon, right? So to begin with, we start with something that we call time travel. We are going to time travel with a book a month, and just imagine that you are time traveling to 1818, and you just are a reader that you want to try to find something to read in the beginning of the year. You are motivated, you want to write, you want to read something Gothic, and you enter into a bookstore looking for something that has been just published out of this great fashion of something that is going on in this year of 1818, which is Gothic fiction. Gothic fiction is the literary fashion of the end of the 18th century and the whole of the 19th century in English literature, right? And whenever we talk about the Gothic, I think nowadays we tend to think about different kinds of things, right? But the Gothic fiction, as Audi was mentioning in the beginning of the class, is just mainly associated with the idea of horror, of terror, and with being scared of this ambience, right? Such as we see here in this image. And Gothic fiction tends to really lead us to different kinds of locations, which they can be very horrific, right? They can be graveyards, they can be ruins, they can be haunted houses full of spirits and other things that will cause some kind of sensation of horror and fear in the reader, right? So this is mainly the idea of the horrific location of Gothic. But at the same time, every time that you think about the Gothic, we tend to think about things that belong to the past, mostly when we're talking about this idea of the fear and of the environment, right? So this is something that the Gothic really tends to provide to us, which we tend to label it as some kind of intrusions from the past. A lost manuscript that was found on a basement of a haunted house. Or maybe you found something that was kind of a plan for revenge from a lost one that died, and then it's going to come back to haunt you. So these kind of things, they always tend to appear in Gothic fiction, and they appear frequently. They are themes that we see very often being presented in Gothic fiction, yes? And this is also associated with something else that tends to appear in these narratives, which is mainly associated with what is not mentioned, what is not comprehended, what is hidden, and the secrets that are involved with the things that are not said. We tend to fear the unknown, so the secrets, the hidden identities, like doubles appearing in literature, like the photo that we have here, it really incites the taste of fear when we are reading Gothic fiction. Yes, and last but not least, we also, for Gothic fiction, we need to fear something in particular, not only the ambience, but also some kind of threat. And these threats, they appear in some different shapes. They can be monsters, they can be spirits, they can be vampires, they can be something different, like, for example, what we see in Mary Shelley's book, right? So this is the aura that we have in Gothic fiction, right? So you are in 1818 and you just entered this very beautiful bookshop. You're looking for something to read. You ask for the assistance of the person who is selling you the books, and you ask for something of this fashion, of the Gothic fiction. You're really into it, right? So the first thing that the salesperson is going to show you is this book, which comes in 3 volumes, and instantly, since the novels are something great that people really love reading in the 19th century, we're just like, wow, that's really what I want. When you open it, you're going to see this beautiful marble paper, and you're going to be already intrigued about what it's holding, about this book that you don't know what it is yet, right? Because the person has just suggested this reading to you. And then you see the first cover, the first page with the title, and you read this very singular title, Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus, in 3 volumes, right? So this is the first book that the salesperson has recommended to you. And just sitting right next to it, there's another book. And this book also comes in multiple volumes, but this one comes in 4 volumes. And these 4 volumes, it carries not only one, but 2 different stories. And the stories are Northanger Abbey and Persuasion, right? Something that you have never heard before because they had just been launched. So you're being introduced to this variety, this novelty in writing. And immediately, when you're putting the books side by side, when you are looking at the first pages, because the idea of the cover illustrated, it's not something that exists yet. You're just like looking at them and comparing the pages and just seeing the title, the idea of the volumes, the multiple volumes. You have similar cover, you have a similar layout, and instantly you think, well, are these books like published by the same collection or the same publishing house or maybe by the same author, right? They have various things in common, right? They look even almost like identical when you look at the layout and the display of information. But at the same time, when we think about how books were published at the time in the 19th century, in 1818, we understand that this was actually the rule, right? Books like this, they were published in a way that they should be almost like identical. And this is one of the reasons why libraries like that, they seem to be so standardized, right? They seem to have like books in the same sizes, similar covers. And this is usually how the first, the oldest editions of the time used to be published, right? So it gives us the feel that we're talking about the same thing. But then you start to look further and somehow you're just like quite lost. Like, where's the author? Who's the author of these books? I cannot really see the name, right? I see here the title, the volumes, I see some epigraph, and I mean, not much information about the author. Yeah. Nowadays we know it's by Frankenstein is by Mary Shelley, but it's not written here in the cover. Yeah. And then Here in Northanger Abbey and Persuasion, we just have a little bit more information. We have something that it says by the author of Pride and Prejudice and Mansfield Park, and etc., right? And I mean, well, which books are these? Like, we should know these books. Like, so how can I find out who is the author of this author's book? So, I mean, since we are inside a a bookshop, so let's look for Pride and Prejudice and Mansfield Park and try to find out who is the author of Persuasion and Northanger Abbey. And when we take a look and compare the other front pages of these books that we have just inquired to the salesperson, we just take a look and we see, oh, well, Mansfield Park, a novel in 3 volumes, author of Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice. Not so much information that we have here, right? Pride and Prejudice, a novel, author of Sense and Sensibility. Nothing different, right? But then in this one, Sense and Sensibility, we see, wow, it was published by a lady. Yeah. But I mean, whose lady is this? Like, who is she? Where is she? Right? We don't know. Yeah. So this is one of the first things that we know concerning the history of publications of books by Jane Austen and by Mary Shelley. None of them had their identities revealed at the time. They didn't publish within their names, right? They didn't publish using their names. And in the case of Mary Shelley, not even by a lady or the author of a different book, but really just absent, yes? And I mean, this is something that we know it was quite the fashion at the time, right? Mostly for women writers. And we have other very famous examples to show you. For example, the Bronte sisters. Nowadays, we understand and we know that Agnes Grey, Wuthering Heights, and Jane Eyre, some of the most famous books by these authors, they have been published by Charlotte, Emily, and Anne Bronte. But at the time, in 1847, that's when these novels were published. They were published under male pseudonyms, right? Acton Bell, Alice Bell, and Coral Bell, right? And this is something that will be the case for many of women writers at the time, mostly because it's a way to do several things, like hiding the gender and also their personal identities due to the content of the book as well. Yeah. As we go further on with our class today, and Jane Austen, people, she only was revealed as the author of her books after she passed away, right? It was only in this book that we're talking more about today, in Northanger Abbey and Persuasion, that her story, that her bio was made public posthumously, right? So she was only revealed when she had already died. And Jane Austen, she was born in 1775 and she passed in 1817. She had a short life, but she wrote very, very significant works. And this year is the year that we celebrate 250 years of Jane Austen. And this is one of the reasons that we're reading her in a book a month, because we want to be a part of the celebration and read her too with all of you. Jane Austen, it's sometimes difficult for us to find out some things about her biographical notes since she was born so long ago, right, 250 years ago, but she was a daughter of a reverend. She had a very simple life, right, like many other writers of her time, and for this reason, I think that she really used literature as a way to try to work, as women couldn't like do many things at the time, as having a profession like women of her social sphere, right? But she did it through writing. So she was the daughter of a reverend. She comes from a very religious family. She had multiple siblings, right? She had a very private life, and as women at the time weren't really allowed to study in a different place out of their homes, she would be for most of her life homeschooled, right? And by homeschool mean like reading everything that the house had in place for them to read, but also learning some basic things that women had to learn at the time, like languages for sure, some kind of artistic talent like music or needlework, like sewing, right, costura, and also dancing. This is one of the things that for the readers of Jane Austen, it appears a lot in her works. And Jane Austen had, although some brief excursions studying in outside of their home, like not being homeschooled, but it lasted very briefly. One of these occasions, it was when she studied at the Abbey schoolroom, which is inside of historic Abbey of the city of Reading, right, in the UK. And she was an intern in this place, right, when she was around 7 to 8 years old. But it didn't last much because it was quite a fancy school for the budget of the family, so she had to be pulled out. And for most of her education, she really studied at home. Yeah, but she comes from a family that really values education and really supported her career for most of her life, right? There was even like several occasions in which she made writing and the product of what she wrote something that was entertained with her family. So she read her work to her family, and her family thoroughly participated in her compositions, right? We have here, for example, you know that Jane Austen had a very close sister, Cassandra. This is someone that she always mentions in her correspondence, mostly because she was her best friend, but also because they did everything together. And this is one of the examples. And it's quite interesting for the topic that we're talking about today, which is going to be Gothic associated with Northanger Abbey, which is a satire, because laughing and humor is one of the greatest fortes of Jane Austen. For the ones who know her work, you know that she is like a super humorous person, and she makes fun of several things. And this is one of her earliest examples of writing. She mocked the history of England. And she does that by saying that her history of England would be done by a partial, prejudiced, and ignorant historian, right? So she's talking about herself. And there's even here a little note saying that in this history, there will be very few dates, right? So, I mean, in which history book that you know that you're not going to read many dates, right? I think this is like the main crisis of any student studying history because there are many dates to memorize, but this one, it doesn't, right? And together with this mock history that she's writing, she's also carrying or using some illustrations by her very talented sister Cassandra, right? So see here you can see some illustrations by Cassandra. Yeah. And I mean, Austen, in contrast with other women writers of the time, she received family support for her career since the beginning, right? And unlike other writers, for example, the Brontes, whom the father never knew that he only knew that they wrote very late in his life, right? But Jane Austen's father supported her work and supported her writing always. He was probably her first literary agent, and he first gave her the instrument for writing her fiction, right? This is the famous Austen's writing table or writing slope because it is in this position, right? It is inclinado a slope. And this was a gift from her father in her birthday in 1794. And she took this wherever she went because this is the instrument that she used in order to write her fiction, right? So most, like all of her stories, she wrote in here, right? So this is something that was a gift from her father, really stimulating her, like incentivizing her really to do something that was important for her. And then later on, it would also become something that she could earn from. And the most famous of novels by Jane Austen are these that you see here in the image: Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, Mansfield Park, Emma, Northanger Abbey, and Persuasion, right? And these novels, they are all also like really part of our curriculum this year. In the first semester, we had the chance to read Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, and Persuasion, right? From in the first part of the year. And now in the second part, in the second semester, we are reading Northanger Abbey, Emma, and Mansfield Park. And by the end of the year, we have read all of the works together. And of course, all in the original in English. And there's something also a good detail to note here, right? You see here, there are two dates in red under Northanger Abbey, 1799 and 1818, which is the year of publication. But what is this? This is the year that she first tried to publish the story. She wrote this book when she was around 22, 23 years old. And she handed in this book, she sold this book to a publisher, and this book was never published by this publisher, and the publisher withheld, impeded, prevented the publication for 12 years. And you may have some suspicions as to why he has done that, but we're going to talk about it in the next few slides. And here we have some of the dates, right? Northanger Abbey then chronologically was the first novel written by Jane Austen. The second one was Sense and Sensibility, third Pride and Prejudice, Mansfield Park, Emma, and then Persuasion. Yes, it was one of the last that it was the last that she wrote, right? So it was published together with Northanger Abbey in 1818, which is this fatidic year that we're talking about. And now, yes, Audio, please.
So just in that slide, guys, how peculiar is this, you know? An author finishes her first book over 10 years before her second. You know, if you see Sense and Sensibility, it was published in 1811, but Northanger Abbey was already finished by 1799. Okay, she was 23 or 24 years old at the time. So she finishes her first book. Imagine yourself put yourself in her shoes, right? You finished your book. You found someone that bought the rights to publication. The guy paid 10 pounds, okay? 10 pounds in the beginning of the 19th century is more or less equivalent to 8,000 reais today, okay? So 8 mil reais. You got 8,000 reais for this book. You won't be a millionaire, but 8,000 is okay. You won't buy a car, but I don't know, you can go for a nice vacation or something, right? And then this publisher never publishes the book. Why would someone buy the rights and pay real cash but never publish, right? And so this outraged Austen, because she really wanted to see her book published and she wanted people to read it. And the book was never out. And so she wrote to this publisher over and over again, asking for the book to be published. The publisher never explained why he constantly delayed publication. And eventually, in 1817, okay, so 17 years later, she would rebuy the rights. Okay, so she would pay him back the 10 pounds to be able to publish herself the book. So she would self-publish. But this does not really happen because she dies before. She was already very sick at the time. So this is why Northanger Abbey is bizarre, because it is both her first book, but also her last in a certain sense. It is published posthumously. this is very, very strange. You know, Austen died in 1817. The book gets out in January of 1818, right? So this is a very peculiar thing. And why would someone do this is something that Anna will be answering later on in the talk. Okay? So think a few theories. Why would someone pay real cash but not publish it? Thank you, Anna.
Get get your theories then, because I mean, this is something that it happens, of course, for many reasons, right? So let's try to find these reasons together. Yeah. But now let's turn our eyes to Mary Shelley. Yes. And Mary Shelley is the like, we don't have many pictures of her, right? Because of course, neither of Jane Austen nor Mary Shelley pictures were something that were yet to be invented, and paintings were really expensive, right? So this is one of the reasons why we don't have so much imagery from these authors. Mary Shelley, she comes from a very prestigious and very intellectual family, right? Her mother was Mary Wollstonecraft, the Mary Wollstonecraft, English writer and philosopher, a very prestigious one, prominent one, revolutionary one of the 18th century. She was born in 1759 and died 1797, only 11 days after the birth of Mary Shelley. And this is one of the reasons why she never met her mother in the end, right? And she is really, really famous and really important to the history of literature and philosophy and politics as well, in like worldly, but of course the UK, mostly because she is the author of the A Vindication of the Rights of Woman, which is one of the earliest works of feminist philosophy, right? So she, in 1792, right, already still in the 18th century, she writes proto-feminist, like the feminist that not the one that we know nowadays, but something that was like the roots of it, of what it is yet to become the feminism that we know nowadays, right? So this is one of the most famous publications of the genre, and Mary Wollstonecraft, the mother of Mary Shelley, was the author of it. And she was also a deeply politically committed person, right? She was actually a very free woman, to say the least about her. Yes, I'm sure that all of you have heard the stories of the Shelleys and the Wollstonecrafts and the Godwins, but she's a very interesting person because not only she was politically committed, but she wanted to see it with her own eyes, right? So she was living during the French Revolution, and she wanted to witness it with her own eyes. So she went to France, she lived in Paris for some time, and she witnessed personally the French Revolution. Later in the end, she writes some philosophical and political comments on that, and this also is part of her very prestigious biography and very meaningful biography and writing. But she also contributed with literary stories, right? But in this case, not for adults, but for children, right? So Mary Wollstonecraft, she was responsible for writing some of the first stories for children of the history of English literature, right? You can see here some the title, some of the illustrations, and she wrote these stories in a time that people were only mostly writing for children to be lectured, children to learn lessons, but not necessarily to have fun with the writing, right? So she also contributes with some kind of stories for children as well, right? So both in philosophy and in literature, she has published and she had something to contribute to. And Mary Shelley's father was the famous English writer and philosopher William Godwin. And he is really responsible for some of the most influential writings in politics at the time. He wrote an inquiry concerning political justice. And this is also something that somehow he includes like the political thinking and the philosophical thinking is also something that he includes in his novels, right? The Adventure of the Caleb Williams being one of the most famous ones. And it's not only a novel, an adventure novel for you to take pleasure while reading, but also something that has some kind of philosophical tone to it as well. And it was beloved by no least than Edgar Allan Poe, the great Edgar Allan Poe, who really commends the writing of William Godwin in his famous philosophy of composition, which is the philosophical literary essay that accompanies his famous poem, The Raven, right, to Corv. So, I mean, two of the most intellectuals and prestigious intellectuals of the time were the parents of Mary Shelley. So, I mean, we hope that the person is, of course, going to produce something very meaningful, right? But she also had a story with her husband, Percy B. Shelley, who was one of the most recognized romantic poets of the time. Right? So he was an English poet, he was a philosopher. He met Mary Shelley through being an apprentice of her father, William Godwin. And Percy B. Shelley is really, really, really influential and meaningful for the history of English literature until today, right? He's one of the most important romantic poets. And probably you have heard of him before because in a very close, a closer example to us, like he was quoted by Machado de Assis in his Memorial de Aires, right? The last novel by Machado de Assis. There is some quotes by Percy B. Shelley, some parts of his poems. And also, if you are a fan of Breaking Bad, you will know that there is a very famous poem by him that was featured in the series and was really important for the development of the series, right? But besides that, he is really, really relevant. And together with Mary Shelley, you probably have heard about their very turbulent affair. They didn't have like the traditional ways of getting married. But this is a topic for another thing and another session. And they had also, for some time, they had to flee the UK. And for this reason, and also for their intellectual interest, they traveled throughout Europe and they have visited various places from France, Germany, Italy, Switzerland, and also we have that famous stop here in Geneva. That's when we have the famous story of the creation of Frankenstein, which was done in a weird summer evening in Geneva, in a villa by Lord Byron, together with John Polidori, the physician who wrote The Vampire that is going to later influence Dracula, Lord Byron, the famous romantic poet, and all of them, they were there together and they didn't have other things to do because it was a bad summer, not much sun to enjoy. And they had this idea of launching a contest to see who would write the most horrific horror story. Yeah. And this is when we start with the origins of Frankenstein. So the first idea of Frankenstein was really to be written. She had the first conceptions of creating this famous story while she was abroad, but she later developed it and created the novel as we know nowadays. But there is something very interesting about this novel, which is very different from other novels of Gothic fiction. Because in Gothic fiction, we are used to have like the monster or the threat of something that is either supernatural, like a ghost or something, or a vampire. But in this thing, in this novel, then we have something that is different, right? And it is really motivated through her travels and her contact with different kinds of scientific ideas that were going around, spreading around Europe, and also the UK. Yes, but this in particular, we have Italy playing a part of place here, mostly because this is where the galvanism is going to firstly be experienced. So in this image that you see here, you see some kind of demonstration of how electricity can also generate some kind of movement in the legs of these frogs, right? So you have here some frogs' legs. And this scientist is trying to demonstrate that something that we call bioelectricity is able to move the legs of a deceased frog, right? So how can we do that? And this is later going to be developed by Galvani into something that nowadays we recognize as galvanism and the bioelectricity, which is something that we associate with neurotransmissions. We understand it nowadays, but at the time it was a common demonstration. Scientists would go different places, just like demonstrating the kind of things that they had just discovered, and galvanism was one of them. So it's very likely that Lord Byron, Percy B. Shelley, and Mary Shelley have witnessed one of these demonstrations, or they really talked about it as a group. And Mary Shelley heard about these ideas of the possibility of reanimating a dead body with the use of electricity. And so, yes, Aura, please.
Just another comment about the history of electricity, guys. It's very interesting that both Mary Shelley and also Percy Shelley have this profound relationship to Italy, right? They stayed there for 3 years. Mary Shelley learned Italian. Percy actually died in an accident in Italy. And so they had this profound relationship to the country. And Italy was the center of the study of electricity at the time. Okay, Alessandro Volta, for example, from whom we get the volts, would right from in our bulbs and in every electrical machinery we have at home. Volta used to teach in the north of Italy, and actually Galvani was one of his collaborators. Who's also Italian, Luigi Galvani, if I'm not mistaken. And so, and actually this experiment by Galvani was very, very important in the history of science, actually, because it proved that our muscles, not only frogs, but animal muscles, our muscles too, they move by electricity, right? So if you get a shock, the muscle contracts. And actually, this was very important for medicine to understand how our body works, to understand that somehow our bodies create energy, this strange force of nature. But also, this was really a step forward into creating the first batteries, for example. This insight by Galvani allowed Volta to create the first battery. And then this was created, this was in 1821, Ampere in France, right? From which we get Ampere, really. His name is the measurement of the electrical unity. He's able to create the first electric motor, right? So you can see how this experiment was very important in a whole line of new knowledge and new technology of the time. So we take electricity for granted because we have TVs and phones and plugs in our houses. But imagine a world in which nobody ever saw electricity, nobody knows what it is and how it behaves. And you see how crazy this was. Electricity during the beginning of the 19th century was what genetics was a few years ago. It was what artificial intelligence is for us. Electricity was the science of the moment, was the big thing, was the thing where all the discoveries were. And so it is not surprising that Mary Shelley, Percy Shelley, Lord Byron, all of these intellectuals, she came from a family of strong intellectuals, as Anna has just showed. It's not surprising that she was aware of this and that she eventually decided to use it. Because if you can move the frogs, look at the image. We can see the legs of the frog, but we don't see the rest of the body, right? So if you can move just the legs of a dead frog, imagine what you could do from the whole with the whole body. So it's not very far-fetched to imagine that you can actually create life and bring someone back from the dead by using electricity. When you look at this experiment, which it's real and it's true and it really happened, and the conclusions were right. Okay. Thank you, Anna.
Yes. And in the end, nowadays, we use electricity to reanimate people as well. Like if you have some kind of heart failure or some heart problem, you're going to use electric shock in order to see it. So, I mean, they weren't wrong. Yes. So this is like the creations, the origins of scientific thought and this and science itself, like discoveries. So Mary Shelley, being like the intellectual whom she was, the curious person who she was, she drank from all of these sources in order to create something new, right? She was not only, when she wrote Frankenstein, she was not only writing horror novel, a Gothic novel, right? She was writing something else, right? So maybe, and this is something that we often see in the critics commenting about her work, that she is one of the first writers to have combined Gothic and sci-fi, and one of the first to have created sci-fi in the first place. And this is shown in Frankenstein or the modern Prometheus from several details, several themes that are important for the story. One of which is the distance from the supernatural elements that we are used to seeing in Gothic fiction. So we don't see spirits, we don't see haunted houses, we don't see a vampire, but we see a creature, as it is described in the story, which was generated by science and technology, by science and the use of electricity in the composition of something living out of dead body parts. So, I mean, this is real. This is something that has been discussed at the time, and she even intensifies the creation of something like the feeling of something real by, in her preface, discussing real scientists such as Erasmus Darwin, right? Part of the family of Charles Darwin, before Darwin, of course, the Charles Darwin, but saying that even Erasmus Darwin would say that this actually could happen, right? Saying that this could actually be something true. I mean, I think it even intensifies the idea of fear, right? Because when something that can be true happens, it becomes even more intense in our imaginary, and we create the idea of fear based on how we measure the menace concerning to our present life, to our real life and our real world. Yes. And I mean, there's also something that is really interesting in the creation of Frankenstein and the Gothic sci-fi that Mary Shelley is going to do. And the first thing is, of course, the approximation of the story, of the fictional story, into our present, or the present of the people of the time, right? Now we read it as in the past, but for them it was read as the present itself. Yes. And here I point out to some of the details that we have in the text, and also the first letter that introduces the novel. The name of the text is Frankenstein, or the Modern Prometheus. Modern, we tend to think of something that is up to date, right? That is closer to our present. It's not about the past Prometheus, it's the modern Prometheus. And the other detail is that here on the date of the first letter, we have St. Petersburg, December 11th, 17th dash. which means it was in the 1700s, but not exactly when. So, I mean, the book was published in 1818, and the first letter was in 17 something. That means that could have happened very close to my time. Therefore, if I'm reading this novel in 1818, the feeling of fear of something that she's narrating that could be possible is going to be much closer to my reality. Therefore, it increases the idea of fear that comes with it. And the third aspect that increases this idea of reality of the novel is really the fact that this is, after all, an epistolary novel. This is a novel that is mainly conducted, mainly presented by letters or journals, right? And I mean, in the 18th and the 19th century, there wasn't Google, WhatsApp, email. People would communicate through letters. And if the book that I'm reading is mostly consisted of letter writing and receiving, something that I do on my everyday basis, then this reading is becoming quite dangerous very quickly, right? It's getting too close for my present time. So if it is something that I do on my regular basis, it's something that I identify as my reality. Therefore, it will really, really intensify my sense of fear when I read the novel of Frankenstein, the creature or the mother Prometheus, right? So you see how Mary Shelley is really creating, innovating with her Gothic fiction, not doing the same, but she's doing something more, right? She is adding her own mark of original work to this amazing novel that we read and we talk about today, right? And this, after all, is going to serve as a way to really prove that this narration is something that really could have existed. Yeah. And the reality effect, people, is something that many authors used. They use and abuse in fiction at the time and until nowadays, right? And Mary Shelley, she has done it in multiple times, not only in Frankenstein, but in other works that she has published. For example, The Mortal Immortal or The Last Man, novels and short story that she really has created this idea of a character finding out a hidden manuscript or an ancient manuscript that creates this idea that, okay, this is really something that happened, and this writer is only narrating, reporting what happened to us in this fictional story. But at the same time, when we have this reality fact, we are kind of unsure, is this only fiction or this could be true? Like, if you are a child of the 90s, you will see immediately this image here of the Blair Witch Project, and you will remember the experience as much as I do. It traumatized me for years, years to come. And coming back to our beautiful Jane Austen, right? Because I think that Jane Austen, and this is the main purpose of this class here, is really to talk about both of them and how both of them have really innovated in Gothic fiction and in fictional writing, literary writing. So Jane Austen in Northanger Abbey, she doesn't write a Gothic book, right? It's not a Gothic book per se. It contains aspects of the Gothic, but it's not a Gothic novel. But it is something else, right? And it is something that we call a Gothic satire. A satire is when we make some kind of parody, some kind of fun of some topic that we want to use as an instrument to illustrate what we're saying. And in Jane Austen's Northanger Abbey, her leading lady is reading this novel here by Anne Radcliffe, The Mysteries of Udolpho, which was the Gothic novel of the 18th century. She was really, really popular. The Mysteries of Udolpho sold like several copies. She got like, I mean, she would be the equivalent of a millionaire nowadays. And she got lots of money because it was really, really popular. And The Mysteries of Udolpho carries all the aspects that Jane Austen is going to mock in Northanger Abbey, yes. But she doesn't do it lightly, right? She mocks with love. And this is one of the things that I really enjoy about this book. And in the novel, Catherine Morland is reading The Mysteries of Udolpho, and she suddenly starts to lose the connection, the touch with reality, and she starts to imagine that she is really in a novel like this. Her reality is the same reality of the leading lady in The Mysteries of Udolpho. And she suddenly starts to think that she is in danger, that she's going to be chased, that she's going to be searched for, and therefore she needs to fear the same way as this leading lady in The Mysteries of Udolpho is. So this is the beginning of Northanger Abbey, and it's quite interesting to illustrate what we're saying. Audio, could you read this one for us, please?
Sure. No one who had ever seen Catherine Morland in her infancy would have supposed her born to be a heroine. She liked books at age 14, provided that nothing like useful knowledge could be gained from them, provided they were all a story and no reflection.
Jane Austen is a genius, right? So she, if you have already read or have already gotten in touch with the first chapter of Northanger Abbey, you're going to see that she starts like mocking from the beginning. It's the same thing that she does in other novels by her, right? And here she really lays the bed for us readers to understand that. The kind of novels that she's reading, that Catherine Morland is reading, these are all just like stories to take pleasure but have no reflection. Therefore, they are going to motivate her connection with her distance from reality. And Catherine Morland, she really is a perfect trap, a perfect bait for the trap that, for instance, Mary Shelley is trying to lay in her Frankenstein. Because the idea of the reality effect that Frankenstein is trying to create for us, it's the same kind of thing that Catherine Morland is falling for. She reads those stories and she immediately thinks that she should be a heroine and there's going to be some kind of danger in her life, some kind of people chasing her, bandits, and some kind of fictional story happening in her reality. But at the same time, when I say that she mocks with love, is that, of course, she was born in the 18th century. She consumes a lot of these novels. So what she's really doing is she's taking this example of the belief in reality effect using a Gothic fiction by creating a coming of age story or a romance de formação, as we say in Portuguese, right? Which is a kind of story that follows the protagonist of the novel for a long time, or maybe through a moment in which is going to be crucial for the development of this character. And this character in Northanger Abbey is full of misjudgments and misconceptions. She starts to judge her reality by using the rules of fiction, which is something that doesn't necessarily apply in her life. And this causes her a lot of trouble. But at the same time, what she's doing is Jane Austen is really a person who defends reading and novel writing and consuming novels in her work. And she really reflects about the importance of reading and also the importance of literature as a social role, having a social role and having importance in the life of people, right? So she is really, really clever in whatever she does, and Jane Austen is she's full of humor, she's full of wit throughout all of her novels, but this one really shines, right? Like Pride and Prejudice also shines, but this one in particular, right? So in the end, the mock gothic that she's doing, she's laughing at horror, but at the same time, just like teasing with some kind of appreciation, right? Because I'm sure she was one of these writers that really create that she became who she was as a writer and as a reader because she read those stories, right? The same way as she consumed lots of sentimental novels and she mocks those sentimental novels in the novels that she writes, like Sense and Sensibility, for instance, even Pride and Prejudice a little bit. But she does that having been a person who read those things most of her life. And she loves those things. She just wants to create her originality by doing it in a different way. Yes. And of course, we have other examples. Audio, you wanted to say something?
Just one comment, Anna, still on the to complement this this thing about how Jane Austen is funny, right? Jessica, Leticia, a few of you were mentioning here in the chat that sometimes maybe we take Jane Austen too seriously. We overemphasize maybe the romantic part, and we often forget that she was cracking jokes all the time.
All the time.
And it's super funny. She's very ironic. She's making fun really of everyone, including herself, because this is, and her colleagues,
Including herself.
other writers. Northanger Abbey is really poking fun at horror stories, right? And so when we were making the marketing for this open class in Instagram a few days ago, someone was protesting, you know, who do you think you are to say that Northanger Abbey is a Gothic story, you know? Well, I guess two PhDs in literature would know what they're talking about, right? But and the
Who would
person was kind
imagine?
of right. It is not a Gothic story. It's making fun of Gothic stories. That's precisely the point. But you know, if you're making fun of something, you're also considering that it's worthy, you know, of making fun. And so in a certain sense, you're also paying homage to it, right? And
Yes.
and we see this Jane Austen did not write any horror stories. Everything that she wrote is about being married at the end. You know, if you want a summary
Realism,
of
yeah.
every Jane Austen novel, in the end you have this big wedding celebration, right? But she was also in this book is making fun of the Gothic, but it's also making fun of a different kind of different genre that existed, which is called sentimental literature, right? And this is something that Anna is exploring in her course with her students. So we don't have time to talk about that again. What is about that today? What is sentimental literature? We don't have time for that. But she was making also fun of this genre. So it was not only the Gothic satire, it was also a sentimental satire. And the thing is, all of her novels could be considered sentimental novels. Okay, so she's making fun of the very genre that she proved herself, you know, her talent. So we often, you know, if you're making fun among friends, it's kind of cool and you laugh a lot, and sometimes you're making jokes about yourself too, right? And so this is the kind of thing that Jane Austen is doing. She, of course, she never read Frankenstein. Obviously, she died 1 year before Frankenstein was published, right? Mary Shelley maybe read Jane Austen. We certainly know that Percy Shelley read her. She was read by people like Walter Scott. So many of other writers, although she was not the Jane Austen that she is for us today, she was not so famous, but certain people, certain intellectuals knew her. So it's possible, and I think I would say even probable, that Mary Shelley read her, especially considering that she was also a fellow woman writer, and Mary Shelley has read the essay, you know, by her mom, and she was very conscious of all the gender biases in her time, right? So we're not saying that there is a debate going on. What we are saying is that Frankenstein is trying to fool the reader, is trying to tell us this is a real story. Be afraid. You could be next. You know, the kind of thing that happens in the Blair Witch Project. Do you remember A Bruxa de Blair? Okay. It looks like a documentary and it was very scary. precisely because it looks real. And Jane Austen is, so this is what Mary Shelley is proposing. And Jane Austen is getting this idea and making fun of that, making fun of people who would believe it. Because Catherine Morland, the protagonist of Northanger Abbey, believes everything she reads. She's not really capable of saying, where reality stops and where fiction begins. And so she gets herself into a lot of confusion precisely because she cannot draw the line. But Anna is very right in here. She's making fun, but in making fun, she's also writing a beautiful poem about the power of reading and the power of literature and why we read in the first place, right? So it's a beautiful novel for people that read a lot, and I guess many of you do. Pick it up. You're gonna, you're gonna recognize yourself in it. I'm sure of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anna.
Yeah. In Northanger Abbey is, I mean, like I'm suspicious to say I love Jane Austen, but Northanger Abbey is really as a novel that we don't talk as much, right, about as other novels like as Pride and Prejudice or Emma, for instance, which is also one of very famous novel by her. But Northanger Abbey has its great appeal because I mean, people, when I read it, I have to control myself if I'm reading it in public because I start like really laughing out loud of the jokes that she cracks, and I'm just like, okay, she must have been a very interesting person, to say the least, right? But of course, she was not the only one to really create the idea of Gothic satire, right? We also have it from somebody else that, judging by the picture and the Born to Be Wild cue that we have here, you may imagine who I'm talking about. Yeah, but we're just going to wait for it for a little bit. Hang in there, don't leave. We will continue this session today, but we just would like to introduce you to some of the things that we do here in A Book of a Month, and Audio will introduce it for you.
Okay, guys, so a little bit of propaganda. I will keep it short, I promise. So we'll just to present the kind of courses that we have in here. In all of them, our students are reading the original texts. They're always, unabridged. So you read the full thing. They're always unadapted. So you're reading the real thing, right? Sometimes it's challenging, but that's very good. There's a lot of potential. If it's challenging, your possibility of growth is also great, right? And so in the short stories course, the idea is that this course is taking place every week. Anna is teaching this course. So there are 2 classes and they come to class every single week, and there's always a short story that people read before coming, right? The short stories are very short. Sometimes they're just like 3 pages long. Sometimes they're max 15 pages, 10 to 15 pages maximum. So the idea is that if you only have like half an hour to read every week, this is the course for you. And what we'll be reading this semester, we'll start with Arthur Conan Doyle, who is the creator of Sherlock Holmes, right? So detective fiction. We move on to one of the big names in the USA, Nathaniel Hawthorne, who's writing Gothic stories. He's kind of contemporary to Mary Shelley. And the very last one, Ambrose Bierce, is also writing a lot of ghost stories. He's also from the USA. We'll read some contemporary writers like Han Kang, who you can see her at the end there. She's South Korean. She won the Nobel Prize recently, the author of The Vegetarian, for example, right? Because sometimes we do read authors in translation. Unless you speak Korean, I assume if you're reading her in Portuguese, it will be a translation. So why not do it in English and improve your language in the first place, right? And we'll be reading also other contemporary writers. Ted Chiang is a genius, in my opinion. We're going to hear a lot from him in the years to come. He's alive. He's very young. He's writing in the USA. We're reading people from different areas of the globe. Ngugi wa Thiong'o is from Kenya. He's writing in English. He just died a few months ago. Great author. We're reading Doris Lessing, another Nobel Prize for Literature, also died just a few years ago, so very important. And other big names, Rudyard Kipling, right, the creator of Mowgli, Joseph Conrad, and the list goes on, okay? So this is the course. If you only have half an hour to read, this is your course. But let's say you have no time, okay? You're very busy, there's a lot to do in university or at work or kids, whatever, you don't have time. So maybe you could come to my classes in the reading class course. This course is happening every week, and the name gives it away, okay? We read in class, so there's no homework, you just show up, and then we'll be reading all of these amazing people, right? From Tolstoy to Catherine Mansfield, she's from New Zealand, one of the great modernist writers. None other than Virginia Woolf said that she really envied Catherine Mansfield. And if Virginia Woolf is saying this about you, you're damn good. We'll
You're
be reading
flattered.
other great modernist authors like James Joyce, for example. We'll read Nobel Prize winners like Selma Lagerlöf. Okay, she's Norwegian, Swedish, sorry, but she got the Nobel Prize, one of the first women to do so. And also, if you can go on to the next slide, Anna, we'll be reading a lot of Gothic this semester. So all these people, from Washington Irving, who is from the USA, to Shirley Jackson, okay, the author of The Haunting of Hill House, one of the best ghost stories ever written. So we'll be reading all of these great people in this course, including poetry, right? Coleridge is one of the great romantic poets of England, right? And so he's super important. And then if you want to read, if you have more time and you want to read a book a month, then we have the novels courses. And so there are 3 types of novels. I teach the novels advanced. We'll start discussing Frankenstein. And this semester, actually, we'll only talk about speculative fiction. So books that are in some way giving us an idea, books that ask the question, what if? Okay, what if we could create life from scratch? Boom, Frankenstein. What if we could build a ship that could travel under the ocean? Boom, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And that goes on, okay? So all of our books this semester in the advanced course are about speculation, okay, the possibilities of around, okay. And so in September we'll be reading Milan Kundera, right, The Unbearable Lightness of Being, a book that was actually written in Czech, but this is the English translation. An amazing book, very philosophic. The title itself is coming from Nietzsche, so there you go. Okay, a beautiful book, a beautiful love story about also a book about political oppression. Then we'll move on in October to Ian McEwan, one of the most important contemporary writers in the United Kingdom nowadays. He's still alive. He's quite famous because of Atonement. I believe the movie in Portuguese is called Reparação, ou Desejo de
Desejo de
Reparação.
reparação.
Desejo de Reparação, right? And this novel is Nutshell. Is really brilliant. This is a remake of Hamlet. It is the investigation of a murder, okay? But it is told from the perspective of a fetus. So basically, there is a baby that is about to be born. He's still inside the womb. He's unborn. And he's telling the story of how his father was killed, okay? And so it is Memórias de Brás Cubas the other way around, It's not, he's not telling the story after he died, but rather he's telling the story before he was born. It's super funny. And it's filled with intertextuality. It's a very nice, interesting narrative. Then we move on to a great classic of science fiction, 20 Leagues Under the Sea, which really dispenses no introduction. Let's just remember that when he wrote this story, submarines didn't really exist. Okay, so in a certain sense, this was literature predicting the future. Okay, not so dissimilar from Mary Shelley. And then we'll end up with A Clockwork Orange, Laranja Mecânica in Portuguese, a very interesting novel by Anthony Burgess, in which the novel is set in a not so distant future, that is, in which Russia has won the Cold War. And so they speak an English that is mixed with Russian. So they use a lot of slangs, and this language is kind of invented, and it has many words from Russian, basically. And so it's not the easiest thing to read, but it is difficult for us non-native speakers. But it's also difficult for native speakers because it's all about the invention of a new language. It's quite similar to what Guimarães Rosa does in Brazilian literature. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
and it's a dystopia, very famous because of the movie, which is also brilliant, right? The books we're reading in the novels advanced have about 200 pages, 250 pages, and then for longer books, if you move on the slide, Anna. Yeah, and then if you want to read shorter books, actually, you could join the novels intermediate, which is actually taught by Anna. Anna, would you like to take up from
Yeah, sure. So people, I teach the short stories, but I also teach the novels intermediate and novels big read. So novels intermediate is, it can be like one of your first contacts with the English language as a reader, right? And every semester to all of our novels courses, but specifically also I'm commenting about this one, we select a theme to guide the reading list that we have in the semester. So for this semester, it's going to be Extraordinary Children, and we have selected 5 stories that talk about children who have extraordinary abilities, skills, or something, right? Magic. And we begin by reading Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone or the Sorcerer's Stone, which is, of course, one of the most well-known stories of magic of all time, needs no further introduction. So this is going to be our first reading of the semester. In September, the second book, it's part of a series of unfortunate events, Desventuras em Série. You might have, if you're not read the books, you might have seen the movie adaptations. And we're reading the first one of the series, which is called The Bad Beginning. And this one in particular, I really, really enjoy, mostly because Lemony Snicket, the author, is conducting some kind of experimentalism in fiction, right? So it's one of the first contact that we have with an easy way of reading something experimental, but in a story that is a bit easier for us to read since it is young adult. In October, we are reading one of the most touching stories there is, right? Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. Probably you have seen the Studio Ghibli adaptation by Hayao Miyazaki, and is one of my favorite ones, right? I saw, of course, like the adaptation before I read the book, but both of them are amazing. Howl's Moving Castle by Wynne Jones is great. She is a British author, and we're reading this beautiful story about magic in a magical world in October. In November, we are reading Rudyard Kipling and his famous Mowgli stories. Here we have an anthology that concentrates all the Mowgli stories, in which Mowgli is a character of the famous Jungle Book, right? O Livro da Selva by Kipling. And Mowgli is one of the most charismatic characters that has been made quite famous because of the Disney animations, right? Probably you've seen the Disney animations. And the stories are really entertaining and nice to read, and also a good way for you to start reading in English. In December, we finished with the beautiful Anne of Green Gables. I love Lucy Maud Montgomery's stories. She's a Canadian author, and I think that Anne of Green Gables is quite well known, right? Recently has been become even more famous because of the TV series Anne with an E, Anne com E, right? And Anne of Green Gables is a really interesting saga of it's a coming of age story, right? Um romance de formação that follows this girl for several years of her life. And this is going to be the first one, right? She's orphaned. She goes to live in this farm, and she is adopted by a brother and a sister. And she is amazing. It's very funny, very witty, very touching, emotional, right? So a really beautiful story to read. And if you have a little bit more time and you like to stay longer with the novels, then you can be our student for novels big reads. And this is where we're going to read Jane Austen's Northanger Abbey. So the course is different from the other ones, mostly because we stay with the same novel for 2 months, right? We stay with Northanger Abbey throughout August and September, with Emma September until November, and then Mansfield Park from November to December, right? So these are longer novels, therefore we need a little bit more time to read it, but also this can be a little bit more complex novel since the type of writing that Jane Austen is conducting in the 18th and the beginning of the 19th century, it has a lot of barrier for the contemporary reader. So we need more time to read and savor this book. So that's why we spend more time with them, right? And I think that sometimes one of the questions that students have is if they have enough like ability of language to follow. And if you are unsure, if you cannot, if you could really follow one of those stories on one of the courses that we offer, we also offer English courses to go along with it, right? You can do the two things in parallel, English Intermediate and English Advanced. You can choose according to your level, something to make you more confident, go for English Intermediate. If you already have English Advanced and you want to be more proficient, then join us for the English Advanced course. And the English courses are taught by Gabriela Naudi, who is our teacher. She is Cambridge certified, and she is a great teacher, very experienced. She has lived abroad. She has been in touch with languages. She loves literature. She's an avid reader, and she's been with us for some time. So we're really happy to also be able to offer you the ability to also study English together, right? I think that got easier, but I don't know if you can actually say something a bit because the webinar configurations, I don't know if they allow us. But if you're here, please say hello to everybody in the chat. Just signal who you are. Gabi is an amazing teacher, and we have been having like very good feedback from the students who love her as well. So this is our prices. If you're interested, talk to us. Audrey is going to send you a link just in case you want to study with us and you want to if you want us to get in touch with you, just follow with the link and answer, and we will get back to you as soon as we can, right? These are our timetables, and we have all of this in our website and in our Instagram profile as well. But coming back and being very quick, not to extend too much of our time, talking about Oscar Wilde, the famous author of The Picture of Dorian Gray. You might not know this because he has been really famous for writing The Picture of Dorian Gray, one of the most impressive novels of Gothic fiction, right? That was published much later in the 19th century. But you also know, if you know his work, you also know that he is a very humorous person. Like he also writes comedies, plays, and etc. And The Ghost of Canterville is one of these examples, right? The Ghost of Canterville, it was published, of course, later in the 19th century by Oscar Wilde, and very similar to what Jane Austen is doing in her Gothic satire, he's also doing in The Canterville Ghost. The Canterville Ghost is a story for you to take a laugh. It's a story that we have a family from the United States who wants to be very close to the idea of the ruins and the abbeys and the traditional houses in the UK. They moved to one of those, and it is, unfortunately, for the ghost in this case, it is a haunted house. And in this haunted house, there lives the Canterville ghost. And what happens is that the ghost doesn't even have the chance of haunting the family because he is haunted by the family instead. So this is a story about a ghost being pranked by kids who really are really just having fun with the ghost. So this is another example of a Gothic satire that is going to be, people, something that is really, really popular from there on, right? We have examples like that goes from Scooby-Doo to Casper, Gasparzinho, right? To Beetlejuice, to Ghostbusters, to Tim Burton's several movies, in particular The Nightmare Before Christmas, which I love, The Addams Family, Convenção das Bruxas, which is Hocus Pocus in English, right? And it is also a story by Roald Dahl. And I mean, we have several of these examples, and it is one of the most beloved types of genres of writing that we really consume nowadays, right? And I mean, there's going to be Vandinha Wednesday Addams next series in second season in August, right? So I mean, we love this, and this is something that Jane Austen has contributed and one of the first to have created, right? We have many, many examples like this. And I mean, of course, one of the things that we have concerning the topic of the two of them, Mary Shelley and Jane Austen, being innovatives of the genre that they are creating, is Jane Austen, of course, contributes to this beloved genre of Gothic satire. But Mary Shelley, she also contributes and a lot to the idea of associating Gothic with something sci-fi, science fiction oriented, right? We have several examples of this. Some of them, for example, H.P. Lovecraft, The Call of Cthulhu, which is one of the greatest examples of the association of horror and sci-fi. I think that Audio is a fan, right, Audio? And yes, you want to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, I think I'm a big fan of Lovecraft, but pretty much everything that he writes is about aliens in some way, right? So much
Yeah.
so that people call it cosmic horror, right? And it's profoundly intertwined with science fiction. So Gothic and science fiction is something that Lovecraft is doing in many, many, many of his works, right? The Call of Cthulhu is just one of them, or At the Mountains of Madness, and so many more. And Lovecraft is also so influential that really opens up the umbrella of how many different works of art Frankenstein has really influenced, either directly or indirectly, right?
Mm-hmm. And Frankenstein has really influenced several other stories, right? We can say, for instance, one of the greatest stories and the most famous stories of horror fiction, The Dracula by Bram Stoker, that doesn't really need any kind of introductions, right? We also have other examples in contemporary fiction, in film, in games, in, I don't know, like other kinds of medias, right? Alien, for instance, this is one of the films that I used to be super afraid of when I was a child, because it really combines the environment, the ambience of Gothic, but it is associated with an alien, with an extraterrestrial that comes to haunt us on Earth. And examples like Resident Evil, Twin Peaks, I mean, we have many examples like this, right? And these two novelists, they are not only great because they have created entertaining stories, but they are great because they have innovated within their genre and also within their the history of literature, right? They have created something new, they have contributed, and this is one of the reasons that they have become the great authors that they are. People, it has been a pleasure. And we thank you very much for being here with us. Our classes start beginning on the 4th of August. We have some groups starting this next week, English, short stories, and reading class, but also some of the novels on Saturday, right? So if you're willing to study with us, please let us know, fill in our link and also talk to us. leave us your comment here, and we will be very happy to have you with us throughout the semester. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry that I wasn't able to really keep up with the chat, right? I'm really, really sorry. But my dyslexic mind cannot cope with many things, technology at the same time. So if you're willing to study with us, just let us know. If you have any questions, I think we have one, right?
Yeah, we had a few. So Julia was
Mhm.
asking if she could participate only for a month to read only Frankenstein. Yes, that is totally possible. You don't have to subscribe for the entire semester. You can come just for to pick up the books you want or the short stories you want. So we do have students that, read one book in the intermediate course and then they move to the advanced and then they go to the short stories. They zigzag looking for the writers that they are interested in. That's perfectly fine. This class, Aida, is recorded and you can watch the beginning in the YouTube. So find our YouTube channel, A Book a Month. If you look for it in YouTube, you should find it. It's also linked in our Instagram profile or in our website. So there are many ways you can find our YouTube channel. And over there, if you go to the live section, okay, as lives, you can find it there, this recording, and you can watch the beginning. And then also Larissa was asking if we have written papers about the topic of this class. No, not really.
Not yet.
We work with the Gothic.
But in a conference, right? I think we have both presented some papers in a conference of the Gothic
Yeah,
Association.
but not written, right?
Not
Yeah,
written.
Anna has written articles about the Gothic in Brazil. So things like Monteiro Lobato and things like that. I have a
Yeah.
few episodes of my podcast that is called Literatura Viral. If you look for it, Larissa, Literatura Viral, just like that, is in Portuguese. There are many episodes in which I talk about the Gothic. So if you want more information, you can find it there. Episodes about João do Rio or about Maupassant. So there are many authors that I explore there. Some of them are horror. What else? Other questions, guys? A lot of people is thanking us for the class, and we're
Thank
very
you.
happy that you enjoyed it. It was a great pleasure.
I'm really sorry I wasn't able to keep up with the chat. For me, it's always like a crisis, right? To be teaching and also not be able to be
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Leticia, yes, this class today is very different from what we do in class, right? Our classes are very interactive. Actually, we talk for like maybe half of the class, and then the other half is students are debating their ideas, their impressions, and we're asking questions. So there's a lot of interaction. If you want to interact, we understand some people don't really want to talk so much. They want to keep for themselves, and that is perfectly fine. So, but there is a lot of conversation involved. It's just that we were in almost 100 people in here today, so it's not really possible to do this here, right? How do you sign up for the classes, Barbara? Just talk to us in WhatsApp or in Instagram, okay? And then we can give you the details. You can have a look in our website, but unfortunately, it's not possible to register there yet because we are book people. We don't understand a lot of how to build a website.
No,
So
but
we
also
don't get
there's
registrations there yet.
and there's also the reason that we are teachers, right? We like to give the students the attention that they deserve. And also this is we're talking about your abilities to produce like to speak in a language, to learn a language. So we like to evaluate person to person. So people, we don't have secretaries. When you speak to our channels on Instagram and WhatsApp, it's with either me or audio that you're speaking to, right? So you can pose our questions. And we're going to be happy to answer to you. But you can send us a message and I'll guide you through your registration, your matrícula if you want to. And Matilda is also asking a question, right? Does a book a month classes happen once a week? We have three groups which are weekly. The English classes, right, with teacher Gabi, English Advanced and English Intermediate, they are weekly. And for the reading courses, the literature courses, we have short stories, which is taught by me on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and then reading class taught by audio on Tuesdays and Wednesdays as well, but different time, like in the morning and the evening.
Yeah, so some courses are happening every week, and the novels, all the courses that have novels in the name, novels intermediate, novels advanced, or novels big read, they only happen twice a month, so every 2 weeks, right? And so yeah, and that is so because then students have time to read, and because it's a bit more reading, right?
Mhm. Isaac is asking if we have considered the possibility of a semester
It's
of
our
modernist
dream.
literature. Yes. We have already taught, well, we taught Orlando and Flush by Virginia Woolf in the past. And we have a catalog of past classes that you can purchase the recording, right? If you want to take a look, you can check it out on our website or also on our link in our Instagram bio, or send us a message and we send it to you. But it will be our dream. I don't know if the students will take it though, right? Because probably in the end of the semester there will be some nosebleeds, I think.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's
We
pretty
love,
intense.
exactly, we love modernist literature. Joyce is one of our heroes. We love Virginia Woolf. But the thing is that those narratives are long. They are very tough. To really read Ulysses properly, you need almost at least 6 months, maybe a
Oh
full
yeah.
year. It's
Yeah.
very, very complicated. So it's a lot of commitment. And we want to do it one day to read many classics. Like, I don't know, Mrs. Dalloway, for example, is one of our favorites. It's
Yeah.
absolutely brilliant, but it's very tough. And so what we did is we read short stories. We'll read James Joyce in the reading class this semester. We read Catherine Mansfield quite a few times already. And so there are quite a few modernists that we have read, a lot of Ernest Hemingway, which is kind of easier compared to the others. Anna was teaching Faulkner last semester, and
Yeah.
Faulkner is very
It
tough.
was
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, and it's
Amazing.
brilliant. And so we are building up to it. Yeah, in a semester or two, we hope to do that. The Sound of the Fury, wow, one of my favorites.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Juliana is asking, how can she know if she is able to join the advanced course? Is there a test? Yes, there is a test. Let me find we have it linked in our bio, but I can send it to you now, just to be sure. But we use a Cambridge test. Let me see. Now that I need it, all my bookmarks are not appearing, but I can have it here.
While you're searching, then can I answer another question, Anna?
Sure.
Yeah. So Beatriz was saying that she just started Harry Potter, the first book, and then she was stopping to look for all the vocabulary, right? Beatriz, if you have registered with us, in the link that we send to you, there's a lot of, access links to the classes. And one of the things that we prepare for our students is a vocabulary list. So actually, we give students a small brochure, like 10 pages or something, with all the words that they're likely to find difficult. So it's like a small dictionary to help you out. Sometimes we also give you, when the books are in the public domain, we can give you editions in which you have at the bottom of the page the vocabulary explained from English to English, right? And so that really helps. Having the right material really helps. And you're asking if you should stop to look for every word. It depends. I would say it depends on the kind of reader you are. Some people love it, but on average, we advise our students not to do this all the time. If you see a word coming up 2, 3, 4 times, then stop and look it up. But sometimes maybe something so specific, maçaneta, fachada, something so specific that you won't even need that even in Portuguese, you know. So there are many words in Portuguese that I don't know. I just bought a tool for gardening the other day, and it's called podão. It's a kind of scissor. I had no idea that was the name in Portuguese, you know. So some words we just don't need, you know. But yeah, it depends basically.
Yeah. I did also asking like which course do you recommend for a teacher with rusty English? I mean, I think it depends really on your availability, right? Because if you already have like advanced level of English and you want to read anything that you want, right? You are be able to understand. If you have time, maybe I would recommend one of the weekly courses, right? Either reading class or short stories, because then you're gonna have like contact with the language and discussion every week. But if you don't have as much time and you are more like connected to reading longer novels, so then you could choose one of the novels concerning your interest in the novels that we're reading, right? But I mean, it's really up to you for what kind of thing interests you. I would say that at least like try to, if you want to challenge yourself, try novels advance or short stories.
And it's also possible, guys, to move around and to test it out, you know. One thing that we practice in a book a month is sharing the responsibility. You know, we really encourage our students to take their learning experience into their hands as well, you know. And so some people think, you know, find the advanced course a bit difficult, but they prefer to be there. Maybe they cannot express themselves so well, but they prefer to be there because they find it's the challenge exciting. They find it's cool. Other people think that the challenge might be, you know, frustrating and annoying and you know, get lack of motivation. And so maybe it depends a lot on who you are, what you're looking for, you know. Really, it varies a lot, but we really we talk with our students and we're very flexible, and so we encourage. You know, we always find the solutions in common accord, and so you could try once in 1 month in the advanced course, 1 month in the intermediate, 1 month in the short stories, and so on.
Mhm. People, I'm gonna leave the link here if you're interested in studying with us. I'm gonna leave the link for you to fill it in. I think before Audrey has shared only with the host and panelists.
Oh gosh.
No,
I
but
was
that's fine.
writing all
Everybody's
this
going to
time only to myself.
probably everybody's going to receive it through email as well. We can send it to you. Okay, don't worry. But technology, I say,
Oh
it
my
can be
God.
tricky.
I was answering your questions the entire. Oh gosh.
Uh,
Yeah, sorry guys. I really answered to many of your questions to myself. Great.
it happens.
Yeah,
It
I promise I'm
happens.
more intelligent than this usually. I can't promise every time, but yeah.
We can say Auto had shared the link to the live on YouTube. This is it, right? If you want to watch the whole thing, you can see it here.
Yeah. Oh my God, what a tragedy. Sorry,
It
guys.
happens. It happens.
Yeah.
But I mean, we are you can reach out to us directly, people. You can talk to us on WhatsApp, you can talk to us on our social media. It's always us replying. So be aware that you're going to be talking to us, right? You're not going to be, if you have questions, just send us a message and we'll be there. Okay?
Thank you so much, everybody, for being here and you know,
Thank you.
giving us your time on a Saturday. Okay. It was a great,
Thank
great
you.
pleasure.
Thank you very much, people. Have a great time. Enjoy your weekend. And if you're studying with us, we'll begin next week, right? So
Thank
have
you
a great
so much, everyone on
time.
YouTube, too. Take good care,
Thank
guys.
you. Thank you. Bye-bye, people.
Cheers.
Thank
All the
you.
best.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Thank
Have a
you. Thank
great
you for
weekend.
coming.